still got it after all these years, folks. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. We're here in Midtown Manhattan, joined by an incredible artist and from a family full of artists. Chris Parker, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jake. Good to see you, man.
Oh, man, it's so good to see you, brother. You know, I wanted to ask you, this beautiful dentist, Dr. Bernardo Gonzalez, he's known as Dr. Rock. He's a dentist, but he's out in San Francisco, and he hired me to do a Woodstock 50th anniversary discussion with Gregorico and Michael Shreve next month. And because he was 15 during Woodstock, and I know you were a bit older, but it fundamentally changed his life. And I wanted to know what your take on Woodstock was. In fact, where were you, and what did it have an impact on you at all?
The summer of Woodstock, I was hitchhiking around Europe.
Dick.
I was in Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, France, Netherlands, ending up in the south of France, and just exploring on my own. I actually was part of an archaeological dig in Wales where we excavated a Roman fort. I actually found a Roman coin.
You unearthed the fort there?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
A granary and a fort. And it was very cool. And I seriously considered becoming an archaeologist. I enjoyed it so much. And just seeing the country and hitchhiking around, it was great. So that's what I did that summer. And I was seeing reports on the news every so often. Oh man, I'm missing Woodstock Festival. So that fall I went to art school, came back to art school in New York, but I started going up to Woodstock. I answered an ad in Rolling Stone for a band looking for a drummer, and that was my introduction to Woodstock. And that was winter of 1970. So only a couple of months after Woodstock. But that's the town of Woodstock, not where the festival was.
Absolutely. I mean, could you talk about was that the biggest moment of TV in its infancy at that time? I mean, think about Michael's drum solo on that, which has been seen. Amazing. But in some ways, it was the best and the worst thing that could have ever happened to him because he had to live in that. He became that. But what was TV like before that? I mean, it was only there was just three channels. It was still relatively young at that time.
Yeah, it was just CBS, NBC, and ABC. That was really it. I think Channel 13 was even kind of, the educational channel was kind of in its infancy. So there wasn't a lot of coverage except, what I saw in Europe, the black and white coverage of, endless crowds and mud and stuff. They didn't actually show any music. They mentioned, Jimi Hendrix and The Who and Sly and, of course, Santana.
Were you hip to the West Coast bands?
Yeah, I had been following. I mean, I don't know if I was hip to them, but I would certainly had, a lot of favorites, Santana among them, and Beach Boys, and...
well, Jefferson Airplane came in, and then, Sly was out there with Rico. Yeah. I'm just curious about, you talked about the cha-cha, playing the cha-cha, and fusing that with the Lindy Hop and all these things, but as far as that Latin rock... When did you get a chance to get your ears? When did you get a chance to play Latin rock, if ever?
Not for a long time. Not for a very long time. I did a record with Eddie Palmieri once I got to New York.
What record is that?
And I worked with John Cicada on a Latin album that won a Grammy. Amor, I think it was called. But no, it wasn't me they called, for Latin rock. But I met Eddie Palmieri at a festival in south of France, Riviera 76. And we sort of hit it off, and he said, I want you on my next record. So, can't think of the name of that record either.
Yeah, but it was in mid-70s or so, yeah.
But I love Santana, and I was introduced to that music. I love Tino Puente, and a lot of the cats, Mongo Santa Maria and Cal Tjader, and there were a lot of things that I listened to on the radio that were certainly Latin that I liked and tried to get into those fields.
Can you just talk about how you've tried to keep, your human spirit. Like, there are a lot of people out there that they get to be a certain age and they have the gold records, they have the money, the fame, and the material stuff, but they're very resentful and bitter because they've taken full responsibility for the music that's come through them and not recognizing that they're merely a conduit for the music. You can take some partial responsibility, but I mean, you're such a humble guy, and I just wonder how you've always been able to maintain and keep the humanity inside in this, as Johnny Vodakovich says, the racket. It's a rough business, and I'm just wondering, was there not even a demarcation point or a definitive moment, but how have you always kept your heart? You've always kind of gotten out of your own way.
Well, I don't think it was.
Yeah, just riff any way you want on that.
I'll try to speak loud.
Yeah, just project. Yeah.
I don't think I was ever conscious of trying to stay out of my own way, but I felt so privileged and honored to be able to get to play music. And then when I started making a living at playing music, I always felt so grateful. My God, I'm making money to put myself through college. I'm making enough money to put bread on the table and pay my rent. And so this is fucking great. This is amazing, And there's a lot of things that can get you in trouble. If you fail to see the world and your part in it, there will always be greater and lesser persons than yourself, and if you start making comparisons, you may end up bitter and vain. That's.
Can you talk about how you evolved into your role and what your role is? Aside from being an accompanist on thousands of records and live, but that's a very important point, what you're talking about.
Yeah, my role has always been to make music with people, to accompany people, to support singers and instrumentalists, and I feel that is my role on Earth. To be here to play drums, to help make music with other people, and to make art, pictorial or otherwise. And it's something that I wanted to do since I was a little kid. I started working when I was 11, backing up strippers, and felt that was...
You were 11 when that was going
I was
down.
11
In Brookfield?
years
Is that you were 11 years old?
11 years old.
Okay, it's just so fascinating. That could not happen today.
I know, it couldn't. It couldn't happen.
How the heck? Who was even watching you? I mean, your parents were like, he's going to go to a strip club to play.
Well, I was bringing money home.
It was a gig. That's unreal.
It was a gig. I was bringing money home and sharing it, and I had 3 younger brothers at that time, and soon 4 younger brothers, and bringing money home to buy food and help pay for things around the house was really appreciated. This is great, Chris, and absolutely, we'll drive you to the gig. and my father gave me his union card to use,
Right, so then, that's right. That's very important to have the cabaret card. Yeah.
Not that anybody ever asked to see my union card. They were happy to have a band, and I met this tenor player getting a haircut in Brewster, which is the next town over from where I grew up. And he said, "Oh, I hear you play drums. You want to do a gig?" And that's how it started. But it was great. The bass player was a guy named Russ Muma, who still has a music store in Danbury, I think. And Ronnie Sant, the tenor player, I don't know if he's still around or not. But that was the core band, and sometimes there were additional. I talked about this last time. Claire Lane was a singer.
Well, no, the Ghost Riders. His sister was for the Ghost Riders in the Sky.
Right.
But I mean, okay, so you at a certain point you're saying that you were able to. Could you talk about how you were able to make enough money to put yourself through college, put bread on the table, make a living doing it? I mean, what was a week looking like in '69 or '70 for Chris Parker? I mean, and what kind of bread were you making? Because I
was doing a lot of club day gigs, with a singer, a keyboard player, a bass player. The personnel changed often, but we would work every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and make $300 each night, $300 a man, $400 a man, to play dances, and parties and weddings and all kinds of side gigs, casuals, they used to call them.
But it was essentially, I just want to be clear, they looked at you guys as professionals.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like it's changed for younger cats?
For the older cats?
Younger cats,
younger
meaning the
cats.
idea that the expectation is that they can, if they're not a known quantity.
I think the entry level is not what it was. I didn't get into the bands that I was in by not playing well. And there are a lot of kids who are discovering music and have a guitar or have a set of drums or have a horn and something like that, and they're excited about it and they have the desire to play it, but they don't have as much actual experience yet. And to their in their favor, there's not that many places to play. There's DJs and there's clubs that use recorded music, and there's not as many opportunities as there were when I was growing up. Every club had live music, a bar had live music, a restaurant had live music. People used live bands for their weddings, for their bar mitzvahs, for their
Right.
So they were.
Do you feel like the onus at Buzzy Feet said, do you know Buzz?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, my man. He said that if people who care about music and who care about the conversation and who just care about culture, that a lot of wealthy people are going to have to pony up and create their own venues and their own labels. Like, it's really,
That's a good idea.
yeah, because nobody, I guess what I'm saying is that within the social strata or the public sphere, there isn't an understanding of the profession. Of music. Lou Tabakin just told me that his grandson is going to college, Berkeley. Do you know how much it is for a year at Berkeley?
40,000.
$57,000.
Wow. Even more. Yeah.
Right now, you're already walking out of there with a significant amount of debt, and it's like basically. So you went to the school you went to school. You were able to put yourself through school,
Yeah.
put bread on the table, and get ahead a little bit. And I think that's it. You can feel that pulse in the music too. But I didn't realize. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the loft scene. You were Wyeth was there. Brecker. There was this cat. Why am I blanking on his first name? Howie Wyatt was sick funk drummer. Brecker was saying.
Yeah.
So it was Wyatt. Lenny White was there. Dave Holland, Chick, and Chris Parker.
Yeah.
Now, what was that vibe? I want to know. Like, you would come home after hours of playing, and then you just, how would that look? Let's paint the picture of that.
I only ever went to Randy's loft and
Liebman's.
Mike had a loft on 18th Street. We play there sometimes. But it was soon after that, early 70s, that I moved on into Grand Street, Grand and Bowery. And
Right.
Don Grolnick and I moved into this building.
Love Don, dude. Still, yeah. I was saying,
Yeah,
I was paying
yeah.
respects to Don.
Yeah. We moved into this building on Grand Street and played all the time. Played until dawn if we wanted. And I had a drum room that was insulated, so I practiced all the time. And Don had his keyboards down there. But eventually, I think I drove Don a little nuts because my wife at the time was a tap dancer, and I was learning tap dancing. Plus, I was still a skateboarder, so I would tap dance or skateboard, and I lived on the third floor.
You were a nightmare.
I was a fucking
Dude,
nightmare.
Gronick was like fucking nightmare. You were.
So eventually, he moved out, and then he sold his loft to Mike Brecker, and then Mike Brecker and I got along great. I gave him a set of drums to use in the loft. He would come up and play, or I would go down there and play. But I never went to Chicks or Dave Holland's. Actually, Ralph Towner.
Yeah, Glenn Moore, Colin Walcott.
Those guys lived right on the corner. They lived on the corner of Grand.
What a hotbed of activity. I just am like, these are all my boys, It's freaking unbelievable. So, but you, I don't care if it was Schwartzberg or Denny Sywell or, just going to they would play in the half note, but at a certain point, they just made a left-hand turn into the studios because they were starving to death. They couldn't live on $12 a week playing jazz. But I mean, what is your concept of the word jazz? Like, did you ever truly play in a situation for a long period of time that in a setting that you would consider jazz music?
Well, I consider the Brecker Brothers band jazz, definitely. And before that,
What are the nuanced qualities of that music that make it jazz?
improvisatory and challenging. I think I talked about that last time. You know, Randy had written this music that was very, very challenging for me to read, and it really put a flame on my ass to read better. So I really went to work learning how to read better to be able to play Randy's music. But that was definitely jazz. But I had played a lot of jazz gigs. You know, I don't know if they weren't. It wasn't at the Village Vanguard or the Half Note.
Where was it though?
Oh, locally, you know, around where I grew up, and jazz. Where my father listened to WRVR and had all the Monk records and Max Roach records and Mingus records and Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Woody Herman. That was the music that I grew up with, so I felt comfortable playing it, although I wouldn't consider myself, you know, a jazz player. I was truly inspired by Roy Haynes and Jack DeJohnette and the guys with Woody Herman, Ronnie Zito I mentioned before, and Jake Hanna, and certainly Joe Jones and Sam Woodyard, and those were my guys, Sid Catlett and Baby Dodds. I mean, those guys are all jazz drummers, and those were my biggest influences, Philly Joe.
And was it because, this is my thing, because like you would not say that you were somebody who, like in a purity sense, were a jazz drummer.
No.
But what was it? The urgency, the feel, the because I feel like jazz is it's your truth. It's an emotive thing. There's an urgency to it, and obviously an adherence to the blues. But I mean, I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, what was inspiring about them. Was it just Papa Joe's brushwork? What, you know, like what was it about all those cats that?
The most inspiring thing to me was Monk's compositions. If I had to,
Even at that time, you recognized it as just completely other world.
yeah,
Did.
and they really resonated for me. I would try to figure them out on piano. I would try to play them on trumpet. I played trumpet at the time. His compositions and Duke Ellington's compositions and the Count Basie rhythm section, but most of all, Monk's songs. You know, any song that you can think of, I listened to and tried to figure out, and was just entranced by it. I would play those records over and over and over again, and love those drummers, Art Taylor or Frankie Dunlop or Ben Riley later. All those guys knocked me out, but it was his piano playing and the actual compositions. And after that, you know, Duke and Count Basie's rhythm section, Woody Herman's rhythm section.
Did you get the feeling that Monk never told the musicians what to play? Like Riley, I mean, how did the drummer fit into that? What he was doing?
I wonder what he said. I saw him live a couple of times, and I know he didn't give any directions on stage.
Oh, man.
And at times he left stage completely.
Right, he would dance around.
Yeah.
Phil Wood said he would dance around once in a while.
Yeah.
Or,
change hats, do different things.
McLaughlin told me the last time we did an interview that it took him a year to figure out Love Supreme. It took him a year of playing the record to really learn what he did not know what Coltrane was doing, but it was the merging of spiritualism and jazz vernacular. And is there a Monk tune or an album that in particular that you really had to work on? How long you had to work on it such a popular guy? But was there a definitive album of Monk's that you can point to that really took you a while to work it out?
There's a Monk big band album, Monk Live at Town Hall with a big band, and it took me a long time to understand those arrangements.
What was going on with those arrangements?
A lot of different counterpoint, and they were playing parts of his tunes, but the melody of his tunes of each tune was kind of divided between the horn sections and stuff, and that was fascinating to me. Made me want to study arranging and orchestration. I'd been familiar with his, quartet albums with Charlie Rouse and Ben Riley, and being able to zero in on his piano playing and his melodies, and especially his improvisations. What is he going to do next? But maybe that album, and one called Monk's Dream, and one called Brilliant Corners. There's a couple of them.
And you were not playing drums, you were playing piano to learn these.
No, I was playing drums too. I was playing along with those records, but after I playing drums along with the records for a couple of hours, I would try to figure out Misterioso. Was a pretty easy one, all the 6 intervals. And Little Rudy Tooty I figured out, a couple of them. But those those melodic fragments and his harmonies and stuff like that just always just resonate for me, always groove me whenever I hear them, or whenever I hear somebody else play them.
When somebody comes up to you and says, well, what kind of music, and then they're just a layperson, but they're like, what kind of music do you play? To me, it's like when people say, oh, you interview jazz musicians. I say, nah, really. I mean, it's all over the place. So, I mean, what's that response? What's this Chris Parker response to what kind of music do you play?
I play all kinds of music. I really do. And I haven't played too much opera, although I work with Pavarotti and Jose Carreras.
You did?
Yeah, and Placido Domingo. I work with those singers, accompanying them for some benefits or something. I did an album with 3 tenors one time, and they were doing pop music. They weren't doing opera, but I've certainly appreciated all the opera singers that I've heard. I go to Metropolitan Opera HD broadcast with my girlfriend now, and it's absolutely the greatest thing because you're getting HD sound, HD picture. You can get close-ups of the singers, and get their actual emotion, and subtitles for whatever language the opera's in. It's a great way to see the opera.
What's challenging about playing percussion or drums in an operatic setting?
I'm not a classically trained percussionist. I have played timpani, I've played marimba, I've played glockenspiel, but just to get through the part. I'm not the guy you should call for that kind of stuff. Or, orchestral snare drum. I'm not the guy. I play a drum kit. I play the whole set, and maybe some percussion on top. But I did play timpani with in this trip to Japan recently. One of the Ryota Fujimaki, his name was, a pop Japanese pop star, and the tune called for timpani, so I played the part. But I'm not a timpanist.
I just wanted to get your mindset going into something when you're being called on to do something that you can do, but you're not really trained in it. How do you go into it? I mean, are you going as free as you want? I mean,
I go in with my ears wide open. What is the right thing to play? Maybe is the first guideline. What would be the right thing to play? And if that's not the right thing to play, they'll tell me what is the right thing to play. But I try to make it musical. I try to hear what else is happening with the bass and guitar and piano and horns, whatever else is happening. Try to fit into what that is, accompany what that is. Who told me this story about? I think Steve Cropper told me this story about Al Jackson in the studio with Booker T and with all the various Stax artists, that
Right.
Al Jackson wouldn't even sit down at the drums until everybody had their parts, guitar part, organ part, bass part, and he would go around the room listening to everybody's part. Say, okay, that's what you're going to do, okay, this is what you're going to do, okay. But before he even sat down at the drums, he would listen to everybody else, what everybody else was playing. Then he sat down at the drums. And then and then played, clearly the appropriate thing for whatever Otis Redding was going to sing, or Sam and Dave were going to sing, whatever it was.
Well, actually, that was his background. As his dad was a big band leader. A lot of people don't know that. So he was. What does that say to you, though? I mean, aside from maybe being micromanaging to a degree, but also he wanted to hear everybody else in the room.
Yeah, wanted to hear what would be the appropriate drum part. What would be not have the drums dictate to everybody else. Here's the guys with the melodic parts, the chord parts, the harmonic parts. Hear what the harmonic rhythm is. Hear what the melody is. Hear what the vocal is before you even sit down to play. Before you play beat one. I thought that was great. And I think it shows on the records, Nobody's Fault But Mine, or Too Hard to Handle, or all those Otis Redding hits. Everything is locked in, so great.
Who was the best band leader you've ever worked for?
Oh, gee.
It can be a draw. It can be a tie. I mean, last time we riffed on Bob Dylan, and sort of
He was certainly great.
But he had his own way. You said he wasn't a great He wasn't a huge communicator verbally. The vibe was always there, and body language, and and he's a trip. I know that. But were there other people that you want to pay homage to? And because you saw Monk play live.
Yeah.
I remember Hubert Eves, the beautiful pianist. He walked in one night, or I'm sorry, Monk walked in. It was Monk's birthday, and Hubert was playing a gig, and he saw Monk come in. He played around midnight, and Monk looked at him and winked at him. And it was more of a mentor thing. But I mean, for you, Butter was obviously a great leader, but
yep.
I want to know. There's just so many people you've played with. The point is that Monk was the most unorthodox leader. So was Miles, and I really feel for music to grow, you're going to need unconventional leadership to come to the forefront. And I wonder about other leaders you can talk about that had unorthodox styles of getting their point across, but getting the musicians off.
That, to me, is more about producers, because...
Well, go there then.
And the producers, I always mention the same guys. Quincy, great producer.
When did you first work with Quince?
On the Wiz soundtrack.
The Wiz?
Yeah.
Was it Diana Ross was singing on that?
Yep, Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. And a lot of guys worked on the records.
But what made that salient for you?
Because he was so cool, and
the coolest cat, man.
He's the coolest cat, and he's a player. He played trumpet with Ray Charles, and we all love all the records from Smackwater Jack to I Know Corita.
Baby, you got it bad, and that ain't good. So many great tunes.
So many great. So he comes in with this instant respect, and he's got all the credibility. So anything he says to you, he said, yeah. And he didn't say much. He didn't say a lot. So that's cool. That's what you're doing is good. What if you did something else? What would you do if you were going to do something else? But totally letting the musicians contribute and play. Let the musicians play and encourage them. Same thing with the Reef. He would listen to everybody playing and encourage them, and we would do a take, and he would say, "Fantastic, let's do another."
I wanted to ask you about because his son
Joe.
Yeah, so you actually had unreleased stuff. You have a CD there?
Yeah.
But the stuff that you worked on with his dad that never actually saw the light of day that you put on there, or you reworked those tunes?
We recorded 3 of his tunes on this album that had never been recorded before. So Joe played me tracks that he had in the vault, and I said, "Oh, that's a good one. Let's do that." And that's the title of the album. Blueprint is one of the tunes, and I just fell in love with with those 3 tunes, so let's record these. So, but as a producer, he was a great, band leader. If you can be a band leader in the studio, that was him. Tommy LaPuma was that way too, let the guys play.
I love that cat. Rest in peace, Tommy.
Yeah.
So
Randy is a great band leader, just by
Randy Brecker.
Yeah, just by commanding the respect of all the musicians, and he's written the part for you, and the part is seriously challenging and
deep,
it's interesting music. Yeah, deep drum part, deep bass part, and it makes perfect sense. So you want to play your best for him, and he gives you a nod, and he's very cool. Seems to be the main ingredient, that the guy is very cool. I never worked with Mike Stern before. He was a great band leader. We played, 4 of his tunes in Japan, and he was great every time. He's just so enthusiastic and so energetic and so into the music. He was really fun.
You were talking before about reading one of the excerpts from Lee Sklar about basically people calling up saying, "Hey, can I send you some demos?" And he said, "No." You've worked with Cooch before, Danny Korchmar.
Yeah.
What about your philosophy when any generation of people, they call you up, they want you to play on the record, and they say, we want to send you stuff? What do you say?
Oh, sure, send me stuff.
But is it gonna? Okay, so you want to hear? You have a different feel than Lee.
No, I want to hear everything. I want to get all the information they want to share. Let me hear everything you wrote. Send me the charts. Send me your sketches if you want to look at.
What about rehearsing?
I agree with Leland Sklar on that. Rehearsing,
because you're going to have the best rehearsal ever, and then it's going to be flat when you go to record, right?
Well, that's a possibility. You have the best rehearsal ever in a certain room at a certain time of day with a certain set of drums, and you get to the studio and it's somebody else's drums or your drums, and it's not going to feel the same. Immediately it's not going to feel the same, and something that you got going at the rehearsal on the rental drums or the rehearsal drums, you're not going to be able to duplicate. It may sound okay, you may get a good performance, but it wouldn't be the same thing that you got going at the rehearsal at Euphoria.
So this is, how do you work with cats who don't have nearly the experience you do necessarily in the studio, and they're freaked out by the fact that you don't want to have a rehearsal?
I work with them gently.
What does that look like? This is important because this is the easy way for alienation to occur. That's what separates you from so many other cats.
Right.
And Lee as well. You guys aren't assholes. So you got the memo about being human beings. So how do you work with people gently when they're freaking out? Because you know that the best stuff is going to come when you hit and do that first take.
I talk to them. Communication is key. Talk to them and explain just that. We could rehearse for hours at Euphoria or SIR or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And get a thing that you really like, but then we're going to play it live at the bitter end, and then we record it at someplace else. We're going to record it. Let's make the goal recording it at the studio. Make that the performance. We'll do the gig at the bitter end, and we'll do this rehearsal. But let's make the track. Make the goal a great performance in the studio. I think that's what you will be most happy with. That's how I would talk to this particular artist. And they may go for it, or they may say, no, I want to rehearse, 6 hours. So, okay, we'll rehearse 6 hours. And I'll try to take notes.
Yes.
Take notes on the first tempo that he liked or she liked, Take a reading on that first tempo and write out what I played the first time that they said, yeah, that's great. Yeah, do that, that's great. Write that out so that when I do get to the studio, I can refer to that and say, well, this is what we played in the studio at this tempo, and you really liked it. Oh, yeah? Here it is. Here's the beat that I played at the tempo that we rehearsed.
That is brilliant. So what you're saying, I just want to make this clear though. For cats that they need the rehearsal, you're going to do it. You're going to take notes on what feels good.
Right.
And then you're going to go back and remind them when you're actually going to go live.
Yeah. Gently.
and hit gently. It's brilliant shit. I mean, but you're not. Have you turned down gigs or paid studio gigs because it was just not the way it should be done, and they weren't getting it? Or do you find an obligation? Do you feel like an obligation that if somebody calls?
I don't feel an obligation, but I feel like it's work, and I should make my best effort to do it. You know, even if I think and I've spoken my mind, you know, this is not the way it should be done. It should be done like this, and they say no. Well, this is the way I want to do it. Okay, fine. That's the way we'll do it. And sometimes it's tedious, but I consider it an opportunity to work with somebody who works in this way, you know, and try to make it a learning experience for myself. Well, this guy or this woman didn't want to do it the conventional way or a way that would have been most efficient, and instead we did it this way, and it turned out okay, and she was happy, or he was happy, so it's a win for everybody, you know, and it was a learning experience for me. So try to see it that way.
It's beautiful, actually. I mean, I'm getting tired of hearing other people play. Can we hear? People want to see you play a little bit. Can you play a little bit more? I'm getting tired of hearing other people's vibrations around here.
So you were mentioning Johnny
V. Johnny V, man.
And I love what he plays, but that's my favorite, one of my favorite feels, to go into that thing, you know, take me to New Orleans and play something that would work there.
I just wanted to ask you, Bob Dylan loved to rehearse. Is that right? He wanted to rehearse when he was horny. If he had 300 songs, he wanted to rehearse those. So how did he? Right? I mean, so he was sort of out of a different mold.
Well, before we did the first tour, we rehearsed a lot.
That's right. It was a live tour, so it was different
Yeah.
than going into the studio.
Yeah, but once we got out on the road, there was no rehearsal. There was, here comes this song, remember it, from
Masters
a
of
month
War,
ago, or- yeah.
Masters of War at West Point.
Right.
But was like when you go in the studio with Butter, would you rehearse for the album, or it was just kind of like? I mean, you learned that from other people that you were leaders and played on their records. Is that right?
Yeah. Butterfield and Bobby Charles and Rick Danko used to come to my house in Woodstock.
Bobby Charles? What year was this?
70s.
Oh my God, dude, this is unreal.
Early
Bobby
70s.
freaking Charles. So
Yeah.
Danko would come to the house.
And, when the bar closed, Deanie's and Woodstock closed, they knew I had a Wurlitzer and drums and a bass amp and a bass. And they would come to the house and jam. And some of the tunes on It All Comes Back started with jams that at my house in Bearsville, then they developed them more. And we did rehearse. What about this? But we kind of rehearsed in the studio. And found something that worked, that Butterfield liked, and that Jeff Moldar liked, and that became the take. Like that tune, "It All Comes Back," or "He's Got All the Money."
Right.
Or something, that was a jam, started as a jam.
So the germ was planted, the seed was planted
Yeah.
then, and then it just materialized into something else.
Yep.
Can you talk about Gordon Edwards, your rhythm mate?
Yeah.
The guy, I was down hanging with Herschel Dwellingham, and who's a ferocious drummer. I don't know if you know who that
Sure,
cat.
I know
Okay,
who he
I
is.
was down in Bogalusa, and I was having gumbo, and he was playing his ass off, and he was on Cats in the Cradle. He did a lot of amazing stuff, but I didn't realize him and Gordon were super tight too. I just want you to talk about Gordon, his legacy to modern music.
I wish you had made his birthday party in February. That
Were
was,
you riffing on him? I mean, was it a roast of some sort, or
no. He played, and two drummers, Clint DeGannon and myself, played double drums, and
Wow.
Mick Gaffney on guitar, Johnny Ross and Robbie Condor keyboards, Max Weingart, Alex Foster on
Wow.
saxophones. I think that's the whole band. And we played, some stuff tunes and things that we used to play at McKell's. And Gordon was great. And then we just played at his rehabilitation center up in Croton on Hudson last month. Went up for the afternoon and played up there. And he played great. It was great to play with him. And his legacy, he was doing dates in the city with Purdy and Richard T. and
Well, but I just want to be clear. Purdy had a band. What was the rivalry band? He had a band, and then I think Purdy had a band. This is going before the studios.
I don't know about that.
Right.
Gordon, when I joined Gordon, it was the Encyclopedias of Soul, and when I came up the first night, Herschel Dwellingham was the drummer, and I never got to hear Herschel Dwellingham play the set. Gordon called me up. I had met him that day in the studio, and he called me up to play, and I never did get to hear Herschel Dwellingham because I stayed the whole night, playing with Gordon. We just sort of locked in, and I kept trying to get up and leave, and he said, "No, sit down, Stuffy."
Wow, he really loved you. You guys, what was the session you guys met on? Do you remember?
Yeah, some jingle for Delco batteries, I think it was. There was a studio on 57th Street.
Well, I'm going to give you a quick quiz question here.
Okay.
What, according to Gordon Edwards, what is the hardest studio music to play?
The hardest studio music?
Absolutely. He got a call one day from Chuck Rainey and said, "Listen, I can't make this gig. I'm going to give it to you." And when he showed up at this gig, it was beyond. He could barely handle it. And I've heard this from a.
I wonder.
Yeah. What style you think? Just take a guess. This is from Gordon.
Some fusion stuff. Some
Cartoons.
Cartoons, really?
The person's going down going down the stairs. Very complex. He said the cartoon music is the hardest.
Wow.
Is the hardest music to play. That was his. And so I ask you, I mean, as a drummer, not even in the studio, but was there a style of music that ever humbled you?
Oh yeah. Randy's music humbled me when I first saw it.
We know the Brecker stuff, but yeah. I mean, I want to go into it. Was there another style that? Granted, there were a lot of styles already developed when you were kicking around, but yeah. I mean, did something come along where you really had to? I remember talking to Ron Tutt, and he was just when reggae hit the States, it really staggered him. He had to really work on the beat because fundamentally the drummer's role changed in reggae music.
True.
And I'm just wondering about Chris Parker as far as a style of music that.
I always, tried to be a musicologist as well as a musician, and
it's a bold statement. I love that. So you studied it all, yeah?
Yeah, studied and listened to as much wild, different, crazy kinds of stuff that I could. I never said no. I didn't want to listen to that. I don't want to. I always kept my ears open. Always kept my ears open to anything that I heard. Whether it was something that resonated for me or not. Listen to it and find out.
Give an example.
Yeah, there's some. Music from Thailand where they're playing all these different beats at the same time. It's like hand clapping and gamelons and stuff like
Beautiful. That. Folkways records, things like that.
Yeah, Folkways records. That stuff I could embrace and appreciate, Lightning Hopkins and John Lee Hooker and Delta Blues and stuff. I could relate to where it was coming from, field chants and...
What about East Indian music?
That's hard. That's hard. Steve Smith is great at that stuff with the syllables, multiple syllables and applying tabla rhythms to drum set. He's amazing at that.
Right. Blaine played Hal Blaine played at Monterey Pop with Ahu Raka and Ravi on a drum kit. Made it seem kind of effortless. That Brecker talked about the late great Lou Soloff couldn't make a rehearsal with Ornette, so Brecker wound up going there, and then later in the day he played mariachi horns on a Johnny Cash studio session. So you go from Ornette to Johnny in one day.
Wow.
Give me the most bizarre studio day in the history of Chris Parker.
Oh, gee. Well, let's see. We were making Joe Cool was a band of mine with Will Lee and Rob Mounsey and Jeff Mironoff, and we were doing original material and kind of fusion-y, groovy music at night. And in the daytime, we were doing Michael Frank's album. With Michael Frank's vocals. Passion Fruit was one album, or The Camera Never Lies.
Was La Puma doing those?
Was he involved? I guess so.
Probably, yeah.
Or I think actually this was after Tommy. This was produced by Rob and Ellie Chiner. I'm not sure. I have to look at the albums. But that was, doing our own music at night, and then the next day going back into the studio with Michael Franks was pretty bizarre. It was both things were wonderful. But that's a hard question. I
want to ask you this question too. Have you ever been bullied on the stage?
Bullied?
Cats, you would get up. Many cats would get up and try to get themselves into bebop settings, or and they were told get the fuck off the bandstand, or come back, don't I guess how do I just all I'm saying is, being the kind of cat that you are, how have you always pushed back against those who are insecure and want to, spew their anxiety and insecurity on you? And because ultimately they're trying to get in your head and affect your playing. Was there an incident in your life where there was, you're going to say no with hundreds and hundreds of sessions?
No, nobody ever bullied me. I mean, I got, intense direction from
Can we get an example? What does that mean? I mean, that's,
Well, like just recently in Japan, Taramaso Hino, the trumpet player, very intense player, and we're playing his tunes, none of which were slower than like 276, I think was the slowest one.
Real high up tempo.
Really fast and hard music, and he's soloing all over it, and came right up on the drum riser to blow at me and play at me. It was great, and we got a very intense exchange. But it was musical, it was fiery and inspiring, and that's what he wanted, like a inspired response to what he was playing. That was great.
What's your message to your generation as far as, I think it's important, Billy Cobham has a rhythm retreat that unfortunately is not going to go on this year in Mesa, but a lot of your generation, they are still playing a lot. Okay, they're playing a lot of gigs. And so I think in many ways that is their way of keeping the continuum going. That's their contribution. I would argue that you guys, in some ways, have a much bigger obligation in giving back. And I wanted you to just talk about the different ways that you feel that you are continually feeding the continuum of music the way frankly, your father, just for the record, your father's still playing gigs.
Yeah.
Your freaking father is playing 2 gigs a night and painting. It's a guy who grew up with William Steig and all these brilliant painters. And so I understand you're kind of still just a son, still. I mean, but can you talk about, other than the bandstand, how do you keep the continuum going? How do you create momentum for future generations?
I try to. I mean, if somebody asks me, I will tell them. Some of these younger Japanese musicians were asking me. It's a blessing to be able to play. It's something you should be so grateful for, that you can play music together, that you can play your music, that you can play your instrument the way you can. Especially these kids are 20 something, and have got all the chops in the world, and wanted me to see all the chops. And after a week, couple of rehearsals, and a couple of gigs, I realized that the things that I said were having an effect on him.
How could you tell?
Because he was playing less, and he was
Wow, that's beautiful, man.
Watching me more, and listening more, and taking your time. It's not, you don't have to fill up every bar. Sometimes just one thing is all the song really needs. I got to play for the song, play for the singer, and not try to show your chops, all over the place. And I had a couple of conversations like that where it's really important not to. I mean, it's good to practice and to develop your technical facility and play all your rudiments and do everything you can to allow your expression to come out with the most facility it can, be in shape to play the music. But when you actually get on the bandstand, it's not necessary to show that you've been practicing. That's
the best articulated response I've heard in a long time. It's not about showing your. Although Ron Carter would say that he wants people to bring their kitchen solos to the table. He's talking about the soloist, though.
Okay.
In terms of creating new musical vocabulary, the rhythm section can elevate it and support it, but for the soloists, they have to be ready to bring those visceral solos that they've been working on and not be afraid to show who they really are. I mean, what kind of if somebody just gave you a satchel of money and said, we want you to create some kind of playground, musical playground, that it's going to help younger cats get experience. Not playing. What would that look like? I mean, the academy today is one thing. It's become somewhat cookie cutter. Obviously, there are some institutions that are better than others. Some have professional musicians teaching at them. So I'm not going to try to paint with a broad brush. But what would your educational system, being such an artist, what would it look like?
Well, a lot like Drummers Collective. I really like Drummers Collective, and over the years have taught there, taught master classes there, taught individuals there, and I really think over the years they've evolved to include exactly what I would, if I had a bag of money, what I would do. You know, individual practice rooms for guys to work on their stuff, not just drums, everybody. And then a room where everybody can get together and play, and then a performance room where you can have people come in, the public can come in and hear these performances, and then a room that's all about technology, so everybody can learn Pro Tools, everybody can learn how to record themselves, everybody can learn how to edit and to produce and to engineer recordings. And then another room that was about business, how to manage yourself, how to monetize your talents, how to balance your checkbook, how to, pay bills, how to budget yourself so that you don't squander the money that you do make on gigs. And a room, there was a Japanese drum museum I went to this last trip, where they had all these drums, not just Japanese taiko drums, but steel drums from the West Indies and drums from the Middle East and Indian tabla, and it was great, and nobody was there, and they welcomed me in. Oh, Chris Parkerson, come in. So
Chris Parkerson.
Chris Parkerson.
I love this. Is so great, man. Those cats are keeping the music alive, man.
They are, and this was great. They gave me sticks or little rubber hammers for the steel drums, and I just spent the afternoon there playing all these different drums. Each one had something that was inspiring to hear. That would be another room at this ideal school.
You've put a lot of thought into this. I really like this. I'm going to transcribe this immediately.
Okay.
I just want to be just for peeps that are going to hear this in 50 years. What were your intentions for getting into music?
My intentions for getting into music was
because nowadays because of the visual. We talked about this. The visual medium now, with the pop, quote unquote pop stardom, you have a lot of people going in for the wrong intention, in my mind, in my opinion. So, what were your intentions to go to music?
My intentions were to create or be part of somebody creating a piece of music or a play or a suite of music or an album that resonated for a lot of people. That was a document of that particular time when we played together, and we had this communication, me and the bass player and the guitar player and the pianist and the horns, and everybody was really on the same wavelength, and we made this recording that stands as a document of inspiration that went from this level up to this level because we were doing it together.
It was a collaborative contribution.
Collaborative contribution. I set out to be somebody who could collaborate and contribute to an artistic endeavor, no matter what it was. And I was always inspired by reading the liner notes on album covers and seeing the names of the guys when I could find the names of the guys and girls.
Yeah, Peter Asher was the one that started it for the rock guys. Before that, it was only jazz albums that had the accompanist.
Right.
So
it's great, and that's a gift to the generation of today to be able to look up guys, and find YouTube videos of Coltrane and Miles and Monk playing together on the same stage for some TV show in Italy. I've seen some amazing clips. You just search YouTube and you're amazed what comes up.
Like our interviews come up,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, but last time I asked Chris to play a drum solo homage to Don Grolnick,
Yeah.
and then it turned out he decided he got inspired later and played the most burning one of all time that it's going on like 13,000 views right now. But as we finish out here, I was just going to say, if you could play something for Ben Riley and Hal Blaine, it'd be great.
Okay.
Monk Lives.
Monk lives indeed.
Yeah.
Forget that. Forget that. Edit that.
CP, man. I'll see you on Sunday night. We just talk about that gig coming up on Sunday night.
Reverend Freakchild at the Cutting Room, Sunday night, June 9th.
Well,
6:30 or 7.
We'll be blasting you out all over the world, man. And thank you for the enlightenment and honestly getting the memo about being a great human being, man. Much love to you. It's the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.
Okay.